Hello. I thought it might be fun to do a dragonfly painting. And I've started, this is an 8x10 canvas. I'm using a flat canvas board as opposed to the stretch canvas this time. And I've already drawn on the design. I put it on in pencil and traced it with the black Sharpie marker. I do have templates. These will be available pinned to the post where you can print them and cut them out so you have a template to follow. And I've just used a black regular fine point permanent marker to draw it on. For paints, I'm using the Royal Langnickel, which I have pinned to my page to show you just a variety of colors. It's a nice little set. You can use whatever paint you want, but I've got primary cyan, cadmium green, bright yellow green, cadmium orange, primary magenta, primary yellow, titanium white, and then I have two other colors here of just craft paints. They're the apple barrel, and I have pool blue and cobalt hue, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to use the cobalt, but I put a little bit out there. I have a variety of brushes and my rinse water and a paper towel, and that's all you should need to get started. I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm going to pick up some of the primary cyan. And I want to create a texture in the background. So I'm going to just start filling it in with kind of like dots. And you notice that I'm going different directions. So I don't want them all going the same direction. So we're going to be creating a nice texture and give ourselves almost a night sky. So we're starting with the big brush, and we're going to switch to a smaller brush. So just go around the shapes, and you see how, so I'm kind of filling in the empty spaces. I'm going to go up and down, sideways, diagonal. This brush is big, so I can't get in the tight areas with it. So I'm just using it for the wide open spots. And then we'll switch to another brush. And I think you can start to see that texture. Okay, I'm going to switch now to a smaller square brush. This is about a 1/2 inch. Again, we're going to start with it wet because we always start with our brush wet. My blue is getting a little thick because I actually poured these paints last night and covered them. So I'm adding a little bit of water so that it spreads a little easier. Now I'm just going to come back in and fill in all the spaces I couldn't get with the big brush. You see I'm going right up to my black lines. as I work my way around my dragonfly, I'm just making sure I have all of the white covered. If it's not covering very well and you've got those little white air bubbles popping up, you either need to make your paint a little wetter or make it a little thicker, because there's texture in the fabric that's on these canvases, and the little pockets hold air. So you get little air bubbles, little white air bubbles. I'm making sure to go all directions, because if I went all one way, it would look like that. And we want it to have movement. So now the background takes the longest because it's the biggest surface that we have to cover. It would be quicker just to paint the whole thing blue, but I really want this look, and I think that it's worth the time. And when we get down around these flowers, we're going to have to switch to even a smaller brush. I like the square brush though, because I can get a nice edge by using the tip. I see that I can start right against something and fill it in really well. I'm just going to get around here, and then we'll switch to that other brush to get down in these flowers around the petals. We're going to use a round brush for that. Oh, we're getting there. Just going to get in as close as I can with this brush. Can you hear that? Sounds like water. That is my dog drinking water outside my painting studio. Her dog dishes are right there. She must be pretty thirsty because she is really drinking. She doesn't care that we're filming. No. says I'm thirsty. Okay. I'm going to rinse that brush out in my water good and lay it to the side. And now I'm going to just come in with a round brush. This is about a size 8 round. And we'll just finish up by going in between these flower petals. If you get some in the petal, you can wipe it right off. And if you've painted with me before, you probably remember me telling you that when you load paint onto a round brush, if you give it a little twist on the side of your palette, after you get the paint on, it distributes the paint evenly and keeps a nice point on the end of your brush. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to get some paint on here. And now, if you watch, I'm going to give this a turn. So I'm just giving it a little spin on the side. And see, the paint's distributed. And it kept a nice point. So I can come right in with that point. Right like this between the flowers. So I can lay the point down. And it does a nice quick job. As you're finishing these up, you can look through and see if you have any areas that need a little more blue, because now would be the time to touch that up. I'm going to make my flowers 2 magenta, 1 orange with yellow centers. You can make them whatever color you want. Okay, I think we got it. Next, we're going to paint we're going to put some color on our dragonfly, and then we're going to do the grass. I like to kind of work top to bottom, so I'm not putting my hand in the wet paint as I try to paint over top of it. So we're going to do our dragonfly next. And we're going to take the white, and we're going to paint the wings white. And I know it seems odd, you're painting white over white and it hardly shows up. But we want to cover that canvas. I'm using my round brush just to come in. We want to cover the canvas for a couple reasons, but one main reason is if we apply any paint over top of this white, it's going to go on smoother than directly on the canvas. It'll help it to be able to blend and move a little bit easier. And second, the canvas could discolor quicker over time than the paint will. And you also could get some peeling where the canvas and the paint meet, some chipping or peeling over time. So by kind of covering the whole surface, we don't have to worry about that. Cover inside his eyes. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit on the black, because we are going to be touching up the black when we're done with our marker. Okay, and while that paint is still a little bit wet, making sure, I'm going to take a little touch of yellow. And I'm going to come from where the wing meets the body, I'm going to pull some lines out with yellow. So I'm not going all the way to the end. I'm starting there and I'm just kind of pulling some lines, and as I pull out, I'm lifting my brush up. I'll exaggerate that to show you. Maybe just a little bit more right here to make that darker. Okay, that's the start of our wings. Now we're going to move to the body. And I'm going to do the body in two colors. I'm going to mix up, I'm going to do this color blue, and I'm going to do a really, really light, almost white. So I'm going to take some white, I'm going to take a little bit of this pool blue, and mix them together. Okay, there's my two colors for my stripes. This light, real light blue, and the pool blue. So I'm gonna start, I gotta see here. Okay, I am going to start with, I'm gonna skip the first one. No, I'm not. I'm going backwards. I'm gonna do this first, the first section with the light white. I'm just going to wipe that off a little bit with my finger. And then I'm going to skip that section and I'm going to come down and do this section. I'm going to skip that one and I'm going to do this one. And then we're just going to do the little end here. I'm going to rinse that brush out. Wipe the excess water on my paper towel. Then I'm going to come in with some of this pool blue. And I'm going to do the bottom of his face here, this little half circle, blue. And then I'm going to skip the one I already painted. And we're going to fill in the rest with this shade of blue. Now you can make your dragonfly any color you want it. You could make it purple, pink, orange. You could probably even make it into a lightning bug. Or a firefly. Some people call them fireflies, lightning bugs. So if you wanted to make him into a lightning bug, I think you'd have to make this last section glow. So you'd want to paint it like you did his wings. I think. I've seen lots of lightning bugs, but not very many of them up close. Usually I just see them twinkling in the weeds in the woods on summer evenings. Okay, so we're done with that color blue. We're going to come back and put some little details on there, but right now we're going to move down to our grass. And our grass, we're going to use both greens. So I'm going to pick up some of this. I'm sorry, my paint is a little bit dry, so let me get it. Before the acrylic dries completely, you can keep it a nice consistency by just adding a little bit of water. So if it's just getting a little solid on you, a little bit of water will help. You see that? How it just makes it a little creamier, so it's going to flow better for us. Okay, let me rinse this brush off now. So I'm using my square brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this yellow green on one side and this cadmium green on the other side. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to paint it a little bit. Then I'm going to flip my brush this way and I'm going to pull it back that way. So what I've done is I've blended it on my brush. So now I'm going to start with this blade of grass, and I'm just going to come from the tip and pull it down, flip it over and pull it up, and you see we got a really pretty leaf. I'm going to come in here, just come. Wipe a little of that excess off. Okay, I'm just going to continue the whole way across. So I'm adding a little more paint. I'm just going to come in here. See how I'm using the tip of my brush, and now I'm turning my brush as I come down. A little more paint. And by having both those colors on our brush at the same time, you can see that it's creating a light side and a dark side to each leaf. Or not leaf, each blade of grass. So I'm going to rinse my brush off frequently while I'm doing this because the paint gets over blended. And then you just have one color instead of the two colors. And we want to keep those two colors sharp. So again, I'm putting the tip of the brush up there and just bringing it down. Okay, then I'm going to rinse my brush off and just keep working my way across. It takes a little extra time to blend the paint like this, but it's worth it because you get that nice blended effect right on the canvas without having to do a lot of work. This one's pretty curvy. I'm going to turn my brush as I go. So I'm starting with the long side, and now I've turned it so it's the broad side. Then I flip my brush. I can flip my brush over because I have paint loaded on both sides. Now you might notice that on these two outside blades of grass, I have these tipped in a little bit. So if you've drawn your own, if you didn't use the templates and you drew it on yourself, that's kind of something to remember. We want those tipped in a little bit because that helps our eye move around the painting. See, it kind of shoots off from here. We come up around the dragonfly and then we catch back up and it brings us around. And that makes for a nice composition. And composition's important. You can be the best painter in the world, and if you don't have good composition or good design, your paintings aren't going to look good. So there's a lot more to making a piece of art than just being able to paint. You have to think about the light and how the light hits the painting and where you want highlights and shadows. And you want to think about composition. We want to make sure that our design has a good flow and we don't have everything pushed too low where we have a big open spot. We want to encompass the whole design. Or encompass the whole canvas. Okay, so I think we said next we're going to do the flowers, and I told you I'm going to do the flowers in 2 colors. Just making sure I don't have any areas of green that need touched up. What do you think? I think that looks pretty good. Okay, for the flowers, I'm going to switch to this, a small brush. This is called a filbert brush. It's a number 4 filbert, and it has kind of a rounded end. Can you see that? That's what a filbert means. It has a round end on it. I'm going to start with the magenta. I'm going to do magenta, orange, magenta. So I'm just going to take that filbert brush, put it in the end of the flower, end of the petal, and as I come back, I turn the brush so it gets narrow. So the tip is the same shape as the petal, the tip of the brush, and as I turn it, it pulls back and just fills those in really nice. That's a really pretty color. Okay, now I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to come up to this one. If you wanted to make pink, you could take this magenta and add a little bit of white to it, and you could make a lighter pink flower. You could do the flowers yellow. You could even do them red. Okay. Now I'm going to do the orange flower. If you can't finish your painting all at once, you can take your paints and cover them with cellophane or plastic wrap. And they usually keep a day or two like that. So you don't have to waste it and start new. Okay, so we have our orange on with the same brush. I'm rinsing it out real good. I'm dabbing it on my paper towel to make sure there's no orange left in it. And I'm going to pick up some yellow, and I'm just going to put a little yellow center in each one. Okay, now I'm going to switch to a liner brush, or not a liner brush. It's a small round brush. I'm going to use it to make lines. Now let's put some details on our firefly. And I'm using, again, the 4-inch round brush. And I do think I'm going to use some of this cobalt color, but you could use any type of darker blue. I just don't want the same as my sky. So, and I'm going to come on, let's make a little stripe on the top of each of these darker blue sections. And how about what do you think about adding some little dots in the orange or magenta? I'm going to take a small paintbrush, and I'm going to take the back side of it because I just want a little end. And I'm going to dip it in my orange paint. And then let's go so I'm using that to make these nice little, just little dots. We'll do the same thing right here. And again, at that little row. Oh, that is just the nice amount of detail. Now, with that liner brush, that number 4, I'm sorry, I keep calling it a liner brush. This small round brush, and you can use any detail brush. I'm going to take some white. Let me just, and we got to put his little antennas on. So you see how I rolled that to keep a nice little point. So we're going to come up and circle around like that. I think you can probably see it better when I do it this direction. I'm going to come up and do the opposite of what I did on that side and circle around. And while we have the white out, I'm going to put a little white line coming out from the middle of the flower on each petal. Just a little accent there. So I just kind of push down and pull, and when I pull out, I pull up. I'm going to put just a little light reflection highlight on his face there. And I think I will do the same thing kind of coming down through here. Just putting a little bit of white, like a reflection. And then I think we also probably could put a little touch of white, just a little bit of a reflection on the top of these blades of grass where the light would be hitting them. Okay, I'm going to go back to that real little paintbrush. And I'm going to take some yellow, and I'm going to just put some little, so they're kind of like stars in the sky. Just going to put a few little yellow polka dots. You could put as many as you want. I'm trying to just randomly place them, not have them be super symmetrical. What do you think? I think that looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to just come back with the marker. That one doesn't look so good. Let me see if I can find a better Sharpie. Here we go. Okay, so we need to give our little guy some dots in his eyes. And I'm going to give him a little detail on his wings. I'm going to give him a curlicue on each of his upper wings. So it's kind of like a C that you just keep going around. And we're going to do the same thing on these lower wings. Now I'm just going to go over, I'm going to go back over my markers. So where the paint was on the marker line, I'm covering it back up. So you see I'm just touching up. And you can see the difference. See that line compared to this side? I don't want to put my hand in the wet yellow paint, so I have to be careful. I'm sorry, I'm turning this so it's going to be sideways for you. I hope you've enjoyed this. I certainly have. And I hope you share your paintings with me. You can share them on Patreon, on Facebook. You can email them to me. But I definitely want to see your finished products. And what's the last thing that we do before we call our painting finished? We add our signature. And I just put my initials. And I always put the year. There we go. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know and watch for more paintings.